Good morning, students. I hope you all have watched the previous video of this chapter. So, children, let us start today's segment by studying the tradition of miniatures. This is another tradition that developed in different ways. Miniatures, as their name suggests, are small sized paintings which are generally done in watercolor on cloth or paper. The earliest miniatures were on palm leaves or wood. Some of the most beautiful of these is found in western India, which were used to illustrate Jaina texts. The Mughal emperors Akbar, Jahangir and Shah Jahan financially supported highly skilled painters who primarily illustrated manuscripts containing historical accounts and poetry. These were generally painted in brilliant colors and portrayed court scenes, scenes of battle or hunting, and other aspects of social life. They were often exchanged as gifts and were viewed only by an exclusive few, which were the emperor and his close associates. With the decline of the Mughal Empire, many painters moved out to the courts of the emerging regional courts of the Deccan and the Rajput courts of Rajasthan. At the same time, they retained and developed their distinctive characteristics. Portraits of rulers and court scenes came to be painted following the Mughal example. Besides, themes from mythology and poetry were depicted at centers such as Mewar, Jodhpur, Bundi, Kota, and Kishangarh. Another region that attracted miniature paintings was the Himalayan foothills around the modern day state of Himachal Pradesh. By the late 17th century, this region had developed a bold and intense style of miniature called Basholi. The most popular text to be painted here was Bhanu Datta's Rasamanjari, Nadir Shah's invasion, and the conquest of Delhi in 1739 resulted in the migration of Mughal artists to the hills to escape the uncertainties of the plains. Here they found financial support from a lot of people, which led to the founding of the Kangra school of painting. By the mid 18th century, the Kangra artists developed a style which developed a new spirit into miniature painting. The source of inspiration was the Vaishnavite traditions. Soft colors, including cool blues and greens, and a lyrical treatment of themes distinguished Kangra painting. Remember, the ordinary women and men painted as well as on pots, walls, floors, cloth works of art that have occasionally survived, unlike the miniatures that were carefully preserved in palaces for centuries. Let us now have a closer look of Bengal. As we saw at the outset, we often tend to identify regions in terms of language spoken by the people. So, we assume that people in Bengal always spoke Bengali. It is interesting to note that Bengali was derived from Sanskrit language, but early Sanskrit texts suggest that people of Bengal did not speak Sanskritic languages. From the 4th, 3rd centuries, commercial ties began to develop between Bengal and Madhya, which may have led to the growing influence of Sanskrit. During the 4th century, the Gupta rulers established political control over North Bengal and began to settle Brahmins in this area. Thus, the linguistic and cultural influence from the mid Ganga valley became stronger. In the 7th century, the Chinese traveler Xuanzang observed that languages related to the Sanskrit were in use all over Bengal. From the 8th century, Bengal became the center of a regional kingdom under the Palas. Between the 14th and 16th centuries, Bengal was ruled by sultans who were independent of the rulers in Delhi. In 1586, when Akbar conquered Bengal, it formed the nucleus of the Bengal Suba. We have read that Persian was the language of administration, but Bengali developed as the regional language. In fact, by the 15th century, the Bengali group of dialects came to be united by a common literary language based on the spoken language of the western part of the region, now known as West Bengal. Students, what we can notice here? We can easily notice that even if Bengal is derived from Sanskrit, it still was undergone various stages of evolution. Also, a wide range of non-Sanskrit words derived from a variety of sources, including tribal languages, Persian, and European languages, have become a part of modern Bengali. Now comes the turn of early Bengali literature. It may be divided into two categories. First is indebted to Sanskrit and the other independent of it. The first includes translations of the Sanskrit epics. The Mangal Kavyas, which are auspicious poems dealing with local deities and bhakti literature, such as the biographies of Chaitanya Deva, the leader of the Vaishnava Bhakti movement. The second includes Nath literature, such as the songs of Mayanvati and Gopi Chandra stories concerning the worship of Dharma Thakur, and fairy tales, folk tales, and ballades. The texts belonging to the first category are easier to date as several manuscripts have been found indicating that they were composed between the late 15th and mid 18th centuries, whereas those belonging to the second category circulated orally and cannot be precisely dated. They were particularly popular in eastern Bengal, where the influence of Brahmins was relatively weak.